And we're live, Pops.
Hey,
What up, boys? This is my dad, Mike Turner, the legend. You know him. You love him. He's here in Youngsville.
I wouldn't say I'm a legend, but I'm here.
You're about to be, dude. You're about to be a global superstar once this airs. You might get 15 views on the YouTubes, dude.
Oh,
How,
yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so what's up, man? How you been?
Doing good. Doing
Yeah.
good. Working, doing good, and, just getting older.
Yeah.
That's the good part.
I've been wanting to have you on because, I like, Nick comes on a lot. Or a lot. He's been on twice, and he's like my go-to whenever stuff starts popping off. He's the one that He's the one that texted me whenever Israel bombed Iran.
Yeah.
He texted me like late at night, and I was like, oh shit. So he's kind of like Colin's. I like to we just cut up and have fun. But Nick is my current events guy,
Uh-huh.
and he's into history a little bit too. But I feel
Yeah.
like I get my side of keeping up with things and history from you, and you have the advantage of having done it for a few decades before I was even
Several
born.
decades. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well,
what-
I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh a lot, and that got me into the the media.
Yeah.
Not from me, but watching.
that's
or
how I
keeping
am
up.
now with Tucker.
Yeah. Yeah.
I listen to Tucker and Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
For some reason, they don't like each other. I think it's because Tucker has like this, like, he's a really anti-establishment guy. I get the vibe from, and Ben Shapiro. I feel like if Israel cut its ties with the U.S., Ben Shapiro would defect.
Would get what?
He would defect from America to join Israel.
Yeah, but
And I'm not saying that I like both of them, but I find if they'll say two things that are the opposite, and I find what's in the middle, and I think that's true.
yeah,
Because like Ben Shapiro is calling him like a traitor to the MAGA movement, and then Ben's like, well, you can't say what MAGA is because that's what Trump says. It's Trump talking. And it's like, well, Trump, just because he made up the slogan for like America First in the movement, that doesn't mean he can dictate what every America First advocate has to think.
Yeah.
I can respectfully disagree with some of the shit Trump does.
Well, the
doesn't
MAGA
mean that I'm not America First.
yeah. Well, the MAGA movement is such an open flux.
Yeah.
Where to where it, it's a flow. It's not a hard set, rigid
Yeah.
concept of conservatism. And that's why you have the disparity between the Republican Party, which is old hardcore, hardline conservative values or issues, whereas the MAGA movement it's more of a flux where it can flow either way,
Yeah.
and that's why you got the Bushes.
Yeah. Cruz.
Mike Pence,
Yeah.
Cruz. No, not Cruz. Cruz is MAGA. And like Lindsey Graham, they
Yeah.
were part of the old establishment GOP, but they bent and flowed, flowed with the MAGA because not for political and voting purposes, but because it was within. That's what really conservatism's all about. It's not following that hard line,
Yeah.
rigid conservative or GOP guideline.
Right.
But-
Would
but
you say that it kind of went back to it? It's almost Nixon-esque, because like Nixon stole a bunch of the Southern Democrats and turned them into Republicans with his silent majority stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it kind of started. It started taking a different shape with whenever it became like the neocon is like a slur nowadays.
Yeah. Well,
and that's whenever you ended up with Bush and Rumsfeld and Powell and all of them, and then they got kicked out, and Obama entered in, and that's whenever the neoliberalism started going wild.
Right. Well,
and to basically like MAGA became like an escape hatch for the Republican Party, to not go back to the early 2000s kind of
right.
rhetoric.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, but Nixon, I guess Nixon started conservatism, but it was Ronald Reagan,
Yeah. Ronaldus
Ronaldus
Magnus.
Magnus. Well, yeah, that's what Rush used to call him. But because
I tell you what,
he
I've been hearing
held,
a lot about this Ronald Reagan guy. He seems like an okay dude.
yeah, well, he formed the conservative wing
Yeah.
of the GOP. It used to be the GOP, the Grand Old Party, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. They were for the businessman, but Ronald Reagan managed to start start getting some of the average voters, workers.
Yeah. So
Which the Democrat Party had at one time captured the working party.
yeah,
What they
that was
call
like the thing they were.
the blue collar as opposed to the white collar workers that the GOP was leaning to, but Ronald Reagan pulled in a lot of the working people, and that's a continuation to this day, if ever so more. Uh, this last election spell.
Right. So you told me that your parents were like some old, like
Oh,
Southern
yeah,
Democrats,
yeah,
like the old school Southern Democrats.
yeah.
When did you first like flip? When did you start voting Republican?
Okay, my first vote was, I think, in I want to call it 81, and it may not be. I voted for Jimmy Carter first year because Louisiana at that time was
Yeah.
Democrat. Edwin Edwards was
This
the
is the most
godsend
surprising
for.
thing I've ever heard about you.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I
Oh
did
no, I
not.
voted. Oh, me. Well, we all did.
Yeah,
RD, my older brother, and myself, mom and dad, naturally, and I'm pretty sure Russell did too.
yeah.
We all vote, but we that's when we started hearing about this guy, Ronald Reagan.
Ronaldus Magnus.
Yeah,
Right?
and then it started clicking. Like, look, this guy's saying what we think,
Yeah.
and the more it went on, of course, I mean, it culminated to where I'm at now.
Yeah.
A conservative, call it MAGA, whatever, but not the old GOP.
Yeah.
But the new GOP that Ronald Reagan brought in was appealing to a lot of people that were listening to what he was saying. Not the same old dull, dreary, crap that the Democrats were saying. Now, we were Democrats because of Edwin Edwards, the
The
Democrat governor
yeah.
of Louisiana, and no,
What,
everybody.
John Bell was his son?
No,
or
no,
his-
no,
yeah.
no relation.
Really?
No relation.
Oh, okay.
No relation at all.
Wow.
That's probably
That's probably why he won it, because
that's a
people were
good
thinking
chance.
back. Yeah.
Just the name, but it was his namesake. It's not like he changed his name because he was running for governor.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
anyway.
So,
But-
so you voted for Carter then Reagan.
Well, it was me and RD, my older brother, would work out in what we call bee yards.
Yeah.
We were working with my dad in the beekeeping industry, and me and RD would go out and we'd listen to the radio on the way to, to the sites, the bee yards that we were going to. Oh, that made sense.
Yeah.
And it was coming from the Republican Party, the GOP, or Ronald Reagan, and Jimmy Carter. I mean, everything went to shit with Jimmy Carter, and we were living that too. I mean, we had gas lines where me and my brother would have to go to a bee yard, fill up our truck, to go there. We got to wait in line, or there's no gas. So
Damn.
it all added up. So we started listening. Well, we had been listening, and we thought the Democrats were great, but.
So that was in '81. That was whenever Iran started.
I'm trying.
Kicking
I
up
wish
some
I had
trouble.
my numbers right. I wanted to make sure.
Well, wait, we can go straight to it. What you trying to figure out?
The first time I voted would have to be when was Jimmy Carter elected? That was my first one.
Okay. God dang it. presidency years. Let's see, 77. So
Okay.
you must have voted in 76.
Evidently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he would have gotten elected in 76 and inaugurated in 77.
That was our first president. Now come
That would have put you
re-election,
at 20 years old, huh? You were born in 56? 57. So you would have been 19 voting
Yep.
for Jimmy Carter. And dude, let me bring this up. You used to talk so much shit about my generation electing Obama. Whenever I wasn't even old enough to vote whenever he got elected, you fucking voted in Jimmy Carter, dude.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, it's nothing. Look, I mean, at that time, even in Louisiana had voted for Democrat governors.
Yeah.
They
still
I'm
do.
sorry,
We
no,
still
no,
do
no.
sometimes.
I meant Democrat presidents.
Yeah.
But you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, Louisiana's a
the
weird one.
last-
We get like Democrat governors, but
And,
and then for the presidential election, we're red as hell.
Well, we see the Jimmy Carter voters like myself. We were swept up into whatever happened with the GOP, the conservative movement, to where I would be willing to bet that was the last time Louisiana voted for a Democrat
Right.
president. Now, even Obama,
Yeah.
Louisiana is 35% African American or whatever you want to call it, black, whatever. The rest is white. I mean, that's a good chunk of change when you go to the polls.
Jeez, dude, this is the electoral map of Reagan versus Carter.
Yeah.
Carter won
Well,
what?
I mean,
That's
and well,
one,
that-
two,
that
three,
began-
4 states.
That began the conservative movement.
Wow, 489 to 49. He beat
it's
the crap out of
And
it.
now at that time, my mom and dad, your grandmother and grandfather, were pissed off at us for
Yeah.
voting for Ronaldus Magnus.
Really?
But we saw it. But they're old school,
Yeah.
hardcore Democrats, which a lot of you elderly at that time were.
Yeah.
Even when Ronald Reagan won, that they weren't gonna break away from their party.
Yeah.
Because they believed they were for the working people. That's why when Ronald Reagan came along, he pulled in a lot of these blue collar workers, in Detroit, Pittsburgh. Now, say like, it goes. You can fast forward to what Trump's trying to do now is get those same blue collar workers in Detroit and Pittsburgh working again,
Dude.
as opposed to what you call paying cheap steel, whatever,
Yeah.
from China or cheap,
Yeah, that's literally
cheaper-
a talking point that Trump went after. Dude, everybody's forgotten about it, but the day that Trump got shot in the ear, got up and shouted, "Fight, fight, fight."
Oh, it was-
Whenever I saw that, I was like, "Oh, cool, we just won the election."
Oh yeah,
That was it.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about that. And dude, all I'm saying is, they don't talk about this Matthew Crooks guy very much in the media anymore. I imagine that there were some people in a situation room that saw Trump go down and they were high-fiving. Yeah, we got him. He's
yeah,
hit. He's down. And then whenever he got up and did that, they started pulling their freaking hair out.
Yeah.
Dude.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were all
Oh yeah,
fucked.
it's poetic justice. Hey, just, yeah,
They were
hey.
watching the TV.
That's
They said,
that's
"We
how
got
it
him."
is. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way that dude acted alone. Somebody
Yeah.
else helped him with that.
Well, maybe so. It just myself personally don't think so,
Yeah.
because you can't get an obscure person like that and just throw him out there. Being that if you want to call it a conspiracy,
Yeah.
not uneducated, but undisciplined.
Yeah.
They could not. I think it would just.
I wonder what his
alone-
last thoughts were. I wonder if he was like, "Yes, I got him," and then his head, the
Well,
top of his head flew off.
every day to this day, be it a Democrat or Republican president, you're gonna have people. Hey, the numbers are there. We've got 300 and whatever million people here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The numbers just show that we're gonna have at least, and it may be
Yeah. Like
under
what percentage
1%.
are just
Yeah.
fucking psycho retards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them fulfill or fulfill the attempt.
Yeah.
to do what they wanted to do. But I don't think I got an argument with your other uncle Junior about that. I didn't think, he was blaming the Secret Service, and he was blaming the Justice Department. If you got evidence, yeah. Or if it looks like, if it looked like a duck, walk like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah.
But there was nothing out there to suggest that it was any kind of a conspiracy.
Yeah. But speaking of Secret Service, did you know I did a pool fence for a guy who was a Secret Service agent for Ronald Reagan?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said he was 22 whenever he finally got inducted into the Secret Service. But he said the assassination attempt on Reagan is what made him decide to give it a shot. So he joined up in '82, and he protected Reagan, H.W., Clinton, and then Bush, and he retired in 2002.
Oh, well, that's cool.
He was a cool dude. So I was asking him, I was like, man, what were the presidents like? Were they like, did they treat you just like as like a nameless bodyguard and be like, whatever, dude, just watch out and just, and he was like, no. He said, actually, he explained to me that whenever he was in the Secret Service, would not vote because he didn't want to feel like he was protecting the guy that he didn't vote for. He was just I just stayed completely out of it.
Well, that sounds fair.
Yeah,
I
and he was like,
dude,
dude,
you're gonna do that.
He was like, I vote Republican. I'm a pretty conservative guy. I mostly vote Republican. But he was like, Clinton and Bill and Hillary were nice to me. He said Ronald Reagan, he was like, I was 22 whenever I first met Ronald Reagan and his wife. And he said Reagan was like a grandfather to me. Like would not only not ignore me, but like would ask me about my problems and give me advice. He said then Laura Bush was H.W.'s wife, or Barbara. Which one would
Barbara was the mama.
Okay, so
W.
Yeah, so Barbara Bush, he said that was whenever he started having kids. And he said Barbara Bush remembered his kids' names and would ask about them and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he said Bill Clinton was even a nice guy. So.
Yeah, well, they all are. And I'm sure Hillary was at one time. But when a witch isn't born,
No.
a witch is made.
Oh, yeah.
So she definitely became that later in life.
Yeah. They got some wild conspiracies about those Clintons.
Yeah, well.
Which I don't know if I believe or not.
Well, I guess you can believe half of that because, what you see is half of what you're going to get when you're looking at a Democrat as opposed to a Republican. Now, he's a rich guy, he did this and did that. Just like Trump is doing. Yeah, Trump is this and that, but it's within the law, within the morals, or within what the Republican or even a Democrat on their side party expect. But when a Democrat does it, it's Katie bar the door. I mean, it's wide ass open. They can get away with this because they own either the Senate or the House. They can do that, and it's just a Republican conspiracy. But for the overall, in my observation, the Republicans, and everybody fouls up every now and then.
Yeah.
But intentionally or I wouldn't say violently, but in the case of Clinton, having an affair or whatever sexual layouts.
I think he stuck a cigar in that girl's pussy.
Well,
I mean, that's kind of, dude. If you're the president,
it may happen in the Republican Party, but you don't hear about it now. Somewhere, somehow, it got out, and of course, I guess Monica, once again opened her mouth, so to speak.
Heyo.
But it leaked out, and we all learned that I've learned that Republicans, for the better part, are on the up and up.
Yeah.
I guess the drawback is the religious.
Yeah, the moral conduct of Christianity, like being. But you know what's funny? Like, if you were a Democrat, you'd be saying the exact opposite. Like I remember whenever I was talking, like Shelby and Michelle are like They call themselves independent, which if you ever meet an independent, they're just trying to say that they're a Democrat, that they don't want to admit it. They were like telling me all the stuff they've heard about Trump and all the stuff that they didn't hear about Biden. They had no clue about Hunter Biden's laptop. They had no clue about Hunter Biden going to China and receiving tons of money, or going to Ukraine, or Biden going to Ukraine and telling them to fire that.
Selective.
They didn't know any of that stuff. They just knew that like Trump was friends with Epstein, and like I was like, but yeah, Clinton was like best friends with the guy. So we just hear the opposite shit. That's all it is. It's selective media, dude.
Oh yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah.
If you dig up,
select, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, it's just what side of the aisle are you digging?
Yeah,
and then you're gonna find the stuff that you want to find.
If you don't go to your sources like maybe Fox, you're not gonna hear that.
Yeah,
you go to CNN, MSNBC, and
a slew of
CNBC,
other, a dozen others.
CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS. It just.
You want to hear something funny? Tucker's been talking about this lately. So apparently, I think it's like the Murdochs that run Fox. He said that the Murdochs don't even like Trump. They actually hate the guy. Well, he said they only run the Republican shit on Fox because that's what they just wanted to have like a network for Republicans to look at.
Well, so the Republican Party for I guess after even George W. Bush. I call him W. His dad. Ronaldus Magnus was the first original conservative president. Yeah. After that, we got a different blend of what H.W. wanted,
yeah, H.W. was
W
Reagan's
wanted,
vice president,
and
then became president.
The conservative movement, it is there, but it has changed, and that was my only point I was making, but
the kids want to come.
Oh, was that Matt?
You could. Oh, you didn't have to do that.
Got shut off.
Yeah. He's gonna be pissed about that one.
Oh yeah. but yeah, Ronald Reagan was really the only true. Ronald Reagan would win again.
Yeah.
In his real life.
Yeah.
It with what? Just to say, you swap Trump and Ronald Reagan right now. Now, we're two different fellas, two different personalities, two different agendas. But Ronald Reagan would win it again now because the originality of, what he believes in.
Yeah.
Trump comes along, refines it, does his own stuff, does his own shit. He's gonna win.
Yeah,
and that's why.
Well, let me say this. So it was a couple weeks ago. Me and you, we talked on the phone for 15 seconds while I was FaceTiming Mom, and it was right after we had bombed Iran. And I was scared. I was like, dude, why the fuck did he do that? Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, dude, we just got out of Afghanistan. That was a disaster. We just finished a 20-year war in the Middle East. Nobody wants another one. And then I'll be damned, a few days later, he posts on Truth Social that it's over with. And now it's been a few days. Did you see whenever he was talking to those reporters the next day?
I'm sure I did.
Apparently, Iran had launched one extra rocket towards Israel after the ceasefire agreement. Then Israel started sending in some heat.
Yeah.
And Trump apparently got on the phone with Netanyahu and was like, dude, get those fucking planes out of there. This is a ceasefire. It was one right. So some reporters were asking him about it. And, dude, that was the maddest I've ever seen DJT. He was talking to him. He was like, yeah, I'm mad at Iran for sending that rocket, but who knows? It could have been a mistake. But I'm also pissed that he was like, I'm also mad at.
You said F and.
Yeah. I'm also mad at Israel because they started dropping bombs on them like you've never seen before. It's supposed to be a ceasefire. What are you doing, bombing the hell out of them? And this is a quote here. This is my favorite part. He goes,
or both of them, or neither one know what the F they're doing.
He goes, they've both been at each other's throats for so many years, and neither of them know what the fuck they're doing. And he walks off. I was like, dude.
That wasn't.
So all those dumb liberals that like to post shit about like Bibi controlling the U.S. and stuff, I guarantee you that dude got a fucking earful from the president after that.
But
Because dude,
you-
he was mad enough to drop an F-bomb on a bunch of reporters
oh yeah,
before he got on
I have
Marine
never
One.
heard it in all these years. I've never heard him use a swear or curse word.
He just said
But it was
they both don't know what the
appropriate,
fuck they're
But
doing.
it was coming from the heart.
It was-
It
yeah.
wasn't practiced. It wasn't staged.
No.
It was the true Trump.
Oh, yeah, he
and,
was
and
mad.
that's the type of president we need.
Yeah, because he got what he wanted to get done by dropping those bombs. Dude, how cool was it that they launched a bunch of B-2s from the West Coast, sent them over to Guam, and that's what everybody was staring at. Meanwhile, Missouri, they had to cross half the continent of the U.S. to the east, cross the
Well,
Atlantic.
they weren't going to be detected either way.
But-
but just it was the bluff.
It was literally, it was like a magic trick, like sleight of hand. Like everybody's looking over here and the B-2s are going this way.
Yeah,
The real
and
ones.
it caught me with my panties down. But I did have one question. I was wondering because I was looking at not a podcast. It was actually a YouTube, some cameras.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name the name, not to not give them credit, but just to say, I was reading some of their text because a lot of these guys that go on YouTube and they're not podcasts, it's 24/7 cameras.
Yeah.
Either in Israel, at one time Lebanon, at Tehran,
Yeah.
Iran. You got a lot of people that just all day long sit on there and just post,
Live
hey,
stream it.
good morning,
Yeah.
having my breakfast. Hey, send me some, and crap like that. But one guy said, at the time they should have been in Guam, the guy said, and I forgot his name, but I'll remember it, when I get home. And
Yeah.
But he said that there's no B-2s landing in Guam. But nobody else responded to what he said.
Yeah.
And of course it was after the fact. After he said that, I'd read it and didn't think much of it. They didn't get the Guam. I think they sent 2 of them.
Yeah.
They got there a little late. But the guy said that there's no B-2s in Guam.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after the fact, I said, this guy knew something was up. He was either in Guam,
Yeah.
or he was on the take,
Yeah.
But yeah, well,
No, they
it
launched
was a
from
good
fucking
ruse.
Missouri,
it was
though.
a good ruse.
How cool is it though that we just have like forget ICBMs, which is like the scary nuclear missiles that can be launched anywhere and
Yeah.
hit anywhere in the globe. We actually just have airplanes that could just make a lap around the earth, drop some bombs and come back home. They launched from Missouri and landed 37 hours later back in Missouri.
Yeah. Oh,
That's freaking wild.
we can do that,
Yeah.
and during the Gaza war, they can deny it or they can claim it or otherwise. Israel had the same thing. Israel was flying 24/7.
Yeah.
If Iran had launched a nuke, that was it.
Oh, yeah.
Game on. And then us too, the United States at that time, definitely, no doubt it, we were flying 24/7 with nukes in our possession. Now, had Iran launched a nuclear, which, you can, that there's debate now to whether they had nukes or not. They probably don't, but 90% purified or
So I've actually done a little bit of research
uranium.
on that.
Well, a dirty bomb.
Yeah.
You launch 10 dirty bombs, it might equal 1 nuclear warhead.
Yeah, but then you got the
One
radiation.
dirty bomb in Israel we would have made glass out of Iran. That's
Yeah.
coming from, if you want to talk about the Third World War, Trump averted that.
Yeah.
Because Israel was going to retaliate. Iran would be nothing but glass right now, no chance to get to the oil. And United States would have retaliated.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And Russia and possibly China would have put their foot in the door. But Trump averted the big one,
Yeah.
and Israel has nuclear capability. Everybody knows that, but they weren't caught with their panties down. They were caught off guard on October 7th, but
Right.
never again. And that's coming from the after World War II, when millions of Jews were murdered. When they got to Israel in 48, their motto they would
Yeah.
say is never forgive, never forget.
Have you ever looked into what Mossad started doing in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s? Those cats were hunting down Nazis in Argentina and Brazil and all. They were going after people.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, that's pretty sick.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Israel's response after October 7th was nothing short of what probably most Americans, or even Joe Biden,
Yeah.
nothing short of what they did and what they continue to do. There will not be a free Gaza state. I'm gonna tell that to all the people that are watching, listening, want opinions. There won't be a Gaza state. Greta Thunberg, or thorn in the ass, whatever. There won't be a free Gaza state. It will eventually, but under Israeli control, because there's not going to be the Palestinian Authority from the West Bank moving in and saying we're going to set up a government. It's not going to happen.
No.
It's going to be under Israeli control. There's going to be no tunnels, no weapons. If they get some Daisy BB guns, they'll be lucky.
Yeah.
But Israel's Israel's the daddy right now.
Oh, they're
So
definitely
I didn't mean to, but I kept it compressed, all that I wanted to say in that one segment.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we talked about bombing Iran, which I'm going to say Trump did something all the other presidents since HW wanted to do, but couldn't do because of the establishment, the swamp.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy would not allow any president, including Clinton, Obama, Biden, even W. They all wanted to bomb the shit out of Iran, but they couldn't.
Yeah, they just kept it in other places. Like Obama dropped record numbers of bombs in Yemen.
Hey, the Beach Boys, they had a I don't know, you don't remember.
I know of the Beach Boys.
Okay, they had a song they called Barbara Ann. Okay. Back in the day, in the 60s. And then when Ronaldus was there, the song became popular because we were bombing the shit out of either Libya or we wanted to go to Iran. But when Ronald Reagan came along, so the radio started playing a take on it, is Bomb Iran, not Barbara Ann, the song. So, and that was popular. I was surprised nobody's come up with that lately. But yeah, they all wanted to bomb Iran. But
is that bomb?
Yeah. But they changed it to bomb Iran.
Yeah.
Which was cool. It sounded good. And back then when Ronald Reagan won his first election, he definitely won his re-election on the second day. After the Iran crisis, and that was why they wanted to bomb Iran.
Yeah.
But Ronald Reagan didn't, but he got the hostages home, kept Iran in check, and held Israel and the Middle East. They got them to the peace talks. The Palestinians didn't want peace. They wanted a continuation of war. Yeah. And even still, if you give the Palestinians a state right now, it's not over. It's hate.
Well,
it's the ideology.
Well, these people they elected Hamas to be a governing body in
over
Gaza.
The Palestinians.
So here's the thing: Israel allowed that with the idea that at least it's not an underground organization anymore. If they're the ones running Gaza, then at least they'll have to be out in the
Well,
open where we can see them.
Israel allowed Hamas, but because it was upstaging the Palestinian Authority, they were negotiating with the PA, but Yasser Arafat did not. The Palestinians or the PA, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, they don't want peace. That's their bread and butter. That's how they make a living.
Yeah.
These fighters, they make, whatever. They probably make well because they're getting funded by Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Kuwait, Egypt. I mean, hey, they're making a good living. We don't want peace. And it's not going to change. It will not change. You give the Palestinians a state, the Islamic movement is not over.
Yeah.
They want world domination.
Yeah.
And
What's funny is now we're up to 2 wars that involve Israel that are measured in days instead of months or years. They had the 6-Day War in 1964.
Now this is the
and now it's the 12 days war of 2025.
Yeah, but that's thanks to Trump. That was the ultimate deciding factor in any peace or ceasefire right now was Iran and their nuclear weapon. That had been hanging over Israel's head for decades. And like I say personally, my opinion, you don't have to have 100%, uranium. A dirty bomb is gonna do ugly on any city in Israel, and that's what Trump and Israel were looking at. But the timeline, even with Trump coming in, we had Obama tried to give them billions of dollars, thinking that it would mollify the Iranians, and under the table, and it was been established that even when Obama paid them the billions of dollars, they were flying cargo planes after cargo planes into Iran, not to do the uranium. They continue to do so.
Yeah.
And it's no secret. So Israel, it was the time in October 7th, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and it was just, I guess all the planets and the moon lined up at a time when Trump said, hey, let's bomb them, because they're about to get something ugly out there. And it was going to get uglier if you did not bomb Iran.
I mean, it worked. They got nuclear peace talks. They started negotiating.
Well, they're going to negotiate. They're going to hem and they're going to haw and they're going to shuffle their feet. But Israel's the daddy in the Middle East, and the United States is the grandpa.
Yeah.
And who rules the roost? And that's where we and the Israelis sit. There's never going to be a breakaway from getting back to Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
And
Tucker.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson. There's never going to be a breakaway because we're too close. Israel, half of Israel is half American already, and I use that number. It's probably less, but a good chunk of Israel are dual citizens.
Yeah.
And even in 48, they saw the way that we got our independence, which was, fighting, a war. It wasn't with a peace treaty or let's do this and let's do that. No, it took the gun, a gun and a bullet for us to be independent. And sure enough, that's what Israel, their second day of existence, they were in a war. So, they were born, and I guess they're going to live and die under the gun.
Yeah.
But they're going to be a free people.
Yeah, look, right here. U.S. citizens in Israel. There's a significant number of U.S. citizens living in Israel, some of whom have dual citizenship, estimated about 281,000.
Yeah.
So.
Which
Yeah.
it's not
That's
really a
more than a
lot. I
couple.
said 50%. It
Yeah.
was just I was throwing a number
Yeah,
out
no,
there.
it was just,
But
it got me curious.
well, I mean, you got to figure. I'd say more than 75% of them speak English,
Yeah.
and those same 50 have been to America, including BB.
Yeah.
BB, well, all you Israeli officers, most of your servicemen have ties or have been to the United States.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, they're smart. I mean, the Germans, if the Germans had kept the Jews, I'll call it under their umbrella, we would be, high Hitler every day
Yeah.
because they killed a lot of people. They deported a lot of the Jews left when they could.
Yeah.
Einstein is one of them, the main.
Yeah.
And had they kept them,
Yeah,
Heil
true.
Hitler.
Yeah,
you
they would have
know,
had the nukes before us, because wasn't Oppenheimer out of Germany too?
yeah.
The two main
Yeah.
guys that they could have.
Well,
That'd have been
and
rough.
that's just a fraction of the people they killed.
Yeah.
Had they kept them, and why? Because one, they were smarter than us. Two, they were jewelers. They were financiers. And the main thing that I take on it, my take is, the Jews. Jesus Christ was a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews condemned him. But God overall said, these are my chosen people.
Right.
He protected them, maybe not all of them, but he protected enough to come back to Judea, Israel,
Yeah.
and establish their own free state.
Yeah. That was like a big problem after World War II, because, like, if you're a Korean person in Europe, and people start shouting like wanting to kill Koreans willy-nilly, you can just go back to Korea. If you're if you're an Arab and you're in Germany and they start wanting to get rid of all the Arabs, you could go back to Arabia.
Yeah.
But the problem was Jews were just widespread, and they didn't have a home to go back to.
Yeah, right.
So the
right.
whole point of founding Israel was a place to, for them to have a place to go.
Yeah.
Where they're themselves. Because like English people are from England, Irish people are from Ireland, Spanish people are from Spain, Mexican people are from Mexico. They all have every.
Where do you send the Jews?
Yeah.
So they came up with the Jews are from Judea.
Yeah.
Okay, and when it was first established, either through the UN or the British had a big hand in that with the Balfour announcement. Okay, let's put the Jews here and mix them with Arabs, Palestinians. Okay, yeah, the Jews were fine with that. So the ships started coming in, but that was before the British were ready for them. But they still came.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the Arabs, not necessarily just the Palestinians or the Saudis, whatever, they were pissed off. They wanted it all. They didn't want just half of it. And if you look at the partition of Israel as opposed to the Arab or Palestinian, they got pretty much equal amount of seabound and landlocked. So, everybody would have been happy. That's how it was introduced in the UN. The Israelis or the Jews at the time, they were ecstatic.
Yeah.
Okay. But then, but the Palestinians, that's when the Arab movement started. They wanted all of it. They couldn't share. So
that's whenever like Egypt, Libya, Lebanon, Jordan,
Syria
and Syria all kind of formed up against Israel.
Iraq was involved. Yeah. Iran was involved. I'm not sure. Iran tried to send some people there. I know Iraqis did through Syria.
Yeah, and that's whenever the Israelis got a hold of some good old American tech and
kind
of showed what was up.
Yeah. Well, and then they talk about the Golan Heights and the West Bank. But back in the day, when you overran a country, you were allowed to take some of that country.
Yeah.
Now, Israelis then and even now, they're not giving up shit. Okay, they kept the Golan Heights because they had to. The Syrians had planted military sites up there. Artillery was constantly raining down on the Bekaa Valley, and once they took the Golan Heights and even took Jerusalem, thereafter. When they took Jerusalem, they said, "The hell with it, it's ours now." Well, that's what winning does. You call the shots.
Yeah.
You can either go back to your original border or claim that land. And Israel planted the flag and said, "F y'all," because the way they were treated, we weren't dealing with they weren't dealing with a peaceful resistance.
Yeah.
This was multiple countries, 10, 20 times the size of Israel, with that many in manpower and equipment, be it tanks, artillery, jets, whatever. I mean, you're 10-1 against the odds.
Yeah.
And look where they are now.
Yeah.
Just almost as good as us.
Yeah. Well, I think that about does it. I'm ready to cook some burgers. How about you?
Yep. Oh, I'm good. Some more adult beverages.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, guys. That was
Later,
it.
con man.
All
Later.
right.
Hey, we're going to do another segment some other time. I enjoyed it.
Yep.
And have a good one.
Later.